Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Colin Mercer always believed honesty was the foundation of any solid relationship. At 34, he'd built a respected career as a civil engineer in Portland, Oregon, working on infrastructure projects that reshaped the city's urban landscape. His hands designed bridges, overpasses, and drainage systems that serve thousands every day. It was work that demanded precision, planning, and above all, trust in the calculations and structures. Colin applied that same philosophy to his marriage with Jessica. They met 11 years ago at an art exhibit in downtown Portland. Jessica was a freelance graphic designer, talented, creative, with a unique eye for color and composition. She worked from home, creating visual identities for small businesses, logos that told stories, campaigns that connected brands to people. Colin admired her independence, the way she managed her own career, chose her projects, set her own hours. They married 9 years ago in a simple ceremony by the Willamette River, with close friends and family gathered under Oregon's typical gray sky, which that day seemed to bless their union with a soft, diffused light. The first few years were good. Colin worked long hours, but he always saved weekends for Jessica. They hiked in the Cascade Mountains, tried new restaurants in the Alberta neighborhood, caught indie band shows in small bars. Jessica seemed happy, absorbed in her projects, always showing him something new, a website she'd designed, a perfect business card, a satisfied client who'd referred her to others. Colin was proud of her talent, of the way she built her own path. But over the last 2 years, something changed. Subtly at first, then more clearly. Jessica began spending more time in the makeshift office she'd set up in the second bedroom. She said her projects were more complex, deadlines tighter, that she needed to focus. Colin understood, or at least tried to. He himself went through periods of overload at work, weeks when he barely lifted his head from blueprints and reports. He trusted her, believed it was just a phase, that freelance work had its ups and downs. Jessica also started going out more. Networking events, she said. Meetings with potential clients, design workshops, creative conferences. Colin never questioned it. He knew, for a freelancer, networking was essential. He encouraged her, told her she was investing in her career, that it was important to be present in those spaces. She always came home late, sometimes after midnight, with stories about inspiring talks, important contacts, future opportunities. Colin listened, interested, believing every word. Then came that Thursday night in mid-September. Colin got home around 7, worn out from a long meeting with his engineering team about a highway expansion project. Jessica was curled up on the living room sofa, eyes red, clearly nervous. Colin felt a tightness in his chest. He set down his work folder and sat beside her. "What's wrong?" he asked, gently touching her shoulder. Jessica took a deep breath, her hands trembling. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Colin felt fear crawl up his spine. He thought of illness, accidents, losses. "Are you okay? Did someone get hurt?" "No, it's not that." Jessica wiped her tears with the back of her hand. "It's about money. I'm in debt, Colin. Deeply in debt." The word fell between them like a stone dropped into a quiet lake. Colin blinked, trying to process. "Debt? What do you mean? How much?" Jessica lowered her head, her voice barely a whisper. $43,000. The number echoed in Colin's mind. 43,000. He felt the air leave his lungs. How did this happen?" Jessica began to explain, words tumbling out in a nervous rush. She said freelance work had dried up over the past 2 years, that she struggled to land new clients, that the competition was fierce. To stay competitive, she'd invested in expensive equipment, a new workstation, high-definition monitors, premium design software, specialized online courses. She also admitted she'd taken out personal loans to cover expenses when client payments were delayed, that she'd used her credit card to maintain their lifestyle while she got stabilized. The debts grew, interest piled up, and now she was drowning, unsure how to get out. Colin listened in silence, his heart heavy. He felt a mix of shock, concern, and also guilt. How hadn't he noticed? How hadn't he seen Jessica was struggling financially? He'd been so focused on his own work that he'd ignored the signs. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, his voice soft, without accusation. "I was ashamed," Jessica replied, tears streaming freely now. "I wanted to prove I could support myself, that I didn't need to depend on you. But things got out of control. And now I don't know what to do. Creditors are calling, threatening legal action. I'm scared I'll lose everything, ruin our life." Colin pulled Jessica into an embrace, feeling her body tremble against his. He didn't know what to say, but he knew what he felt. He wanted to protect her, he wanted to take that weight off her shoulders. They were a couple, a team. If she was sinking, he'd pull her back. "We're going to fix this," he said, his voice steady. "Together. I'll help you pay off these debts. We're getting out of this." Jessica lifted her face, eyes wide with surprise and relief. "You'd do that? But it's so much money, Colin. I can't ask that of you." "You're not asking. I'm offering." Colin held her face between his hands, looking into her eyes. "We're married, Jess. What's mine is yours. We're going through this together." In the days that followed, Colin organized everything. He had an emergency fund he'd been building for years, about $25,000. He'd also saved $15,000 for a possible home expansion, maybe adding a deck to the backyard or remodeling the kitchen. And he had modest stock investments, which he liquidated quickly, raising another $5,000. Altogether, he gathered $45,000. He transferred the money into Jessica's account, enough to clear all her debts and leave a small cushion. Jessica thanked him over and over, saying he was the best husband in the world, that she didn't deserve someone so good, that she'd work hard to make it up to him. Colin believed her. He believed because he wanted to believe, because love often clouds judgment, because trust is easier than suspicion. The next morning, a Friday, Colin woke early, around 6, as usual. He had an important meeting at the office at 8:30 and wanted to review some reports beforehand. He turned over in bed, expecting to see Jessica still asleep beside him, but the space was empty. He heard noise in the bathroom and thought she was getting ready. He got up, dressed quickly, and went to the kitchen to make coffee. The house felt strangely quiet. Colin filled the coffee maker, grabbed a mug, and waited for the dark liquid to drip. He called out for Jessica, but there was no answer. He went upstairs, checked the bathroom, her office, the guest room. Nothing. He returned to their bedroom and opened the closet. Several of her clothes were gone. He checked the dresser drawer where she kept personal items, empty. His heart quickened. Colin grabbed his phone and called Jessica. Straight to voicemail. He sent a text, "Where are you?" No reply. He tried again. And again. Each attempt raised his anxiety, mixed with a strange feeling, a premonition he refused to name. He went to her office. The laptop she always used for work wasn't there. Her sketchbooks, reference materials, all gone. He checked the garage, her car wasn't there. Colin returned inside, panic beginning to settle in. He checked the kitchen again and found, discreetly left on the dining table, a handwritten note on a small piece of paper. "I need time. Don't try to find me." Colin read and reread the words. Time? Time for what? They'd just overcome a financial crisis together. Why would she need time now? And why leave without saying anything, without a proper explanation? The message was cold, distant, completely unlike the gratitude she'd shown in the past few days. He spent the day in confusion and anguish. He called the office and said he was sick, that he couldn't come in. He stayed home, trying to understand, trying to find a logical explanation. Maybe she was emotionally overwhelmed and needed space to process everything. Maybe she'd gone to a friend's house. But something about that note, the way it was written, the coldness of the words, told Colin there was more. That night, after more than 20 failed attempts to reach her, Colin decided to investigate. He went to the shared desktop computer they used for household matters and logged into their joint email account, used for bills, accounts, important documents. He scrolled through recent emails, searching for something, anything that might offer a clue. Then he saw it, a folder of archived emails he'd never noticed before. He clicked. Inside were old messages, mostly exchanges between Jessica and someone named Ethan. Colin opened one, dated 6 months ago. It was a casual conversation, seemingly innocent, about design, photography, art. But there was an intimacy in the words, a tone that didn't feel purely professional. He opened another, more recent, from 3 weeks ago. In it, Jessica wrote, "I can't keep pretending anymore. I want to be with you, start over, finally be free." The words pierced Colin like blades. Free. Free from what? From him? From the marriage? He kept reading, his breathing growing harder. Ethan replied saying they were close, that soon they could be together without hiding anything, that he was preparing everything to welcome her. Colin closed his eyes, trying to hold back the wave of nausea rising in his throat. He'd been betrayed. Not just financially, but emotionally, completely. The debts, the tearful confession, the plea for help, it had all been a strategy. She'd used his money to start fresh with another man. He stood from the chair, shaking, rage and humiliation crashing over him in waves. He needed more information. He tried accessing Jessica's personal email account, but the password had been changed. He checked her social media, he'd been blocked on all platforms. She'd prepared for this. She'd planned it. Colin called Rachel, Jessica's best friend. Rachel and Colin had always had a cordial relationship, but they'd never been close. She answered after a few rings. "Colin? Hi, are you okay?" "Rachel, I need to know where Jessica is." Colin's voice was tense, controlled, but on the edge of breaking. There was a long pause on the other end. I don't know if I should." "Rachel, please. She's disappeared. Left a note saying she needs time. I need to know what's happening." Another silence. Then, with a heavy sigh, Rachel spoke. "Look, I didn't want to get involved in this. But Jessica is with Ethan. Ethan Caldwell. He's a photographer she met about 2 years ago at a networking event. They've been having an affair, Colin. For a while now." Colin felt his legs weaken. He leaned against the table. "How long?" "I'm not sure exactly. But at least 1.5 years, maybe 2 years. I'm so sorry, Colin. I thought you knew, or that she was going to tell you." "Where does he live?" Colin asked, his voice now cold, determined. "I shouldn't." "Where, Rachel?" She hesitated, then gave in. "Eugene. He has a studio there. I don't know the exact address, but the studio's name is Caldwell Photography. You should be able to find it online." Colin thanked her quickly and hung up. He went straight to the computer, searched for the studio, found the address. Eugene was about 2 hours south of Portland on Interstate 5. He grabbed his car keys, put on a jacket, and left the house without a second thought. The drive was a blur. Colin drove on autopilot, his mind spinning in circles of anger, sadness, disbelief. How hadn't he seen? How had he been so blind? All those nights she came home late, all those networking events, every excuse, it had all been lies. She was with Ethan. Building a parallel life while Colin worked, trusted, loved. He arrived in Eugene just after 10 at night. Ethan's studio was in a renovated old building downtown, the kind of place marketed as creative and modern. Colin parked in front and watched the lit windows on the second floor. He saw shadows moving inside. His heart pounded, a mix of adrenaline and determination pulsing through his veins. He climbed the stairs to the second floor, found the door with the sign, Caldwell Photography, and knocked. Loudly. 3 times. The door opened, and a man appeared. Tall, well-groomed beard, about 36, wearing a casual shirt and jeans. Ethan. He looked at Colin with confusion. "Can I help you?" "Where's Jessica?" Colin asked, his voice unnervingly calm. Ethan's face changed. Recognition, then nervousness. "Look, I don't know who. Don't lie to me." Colin took a step forward. "I know she's here. And I'm not leaving until I talk to her." Ethan hesitated, then stepped back, opening the door a little more. "Jess. Someone's here for you." Jessica appeared from a room at the back of the studio. When she saw Colin, her face went pale. "Colin, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," Colin replied, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. He looked around. The studio was spacious, with expensive photographic equipment, comfortable sofas, an open kitchen. Clearly, Ethan had money, or access to someone else's. "You can't just walk in here," Ethan began, trying to sound authoritative. Colin ignored him completely. He fixed his eyes on Jessica, who stood in the middle of the room, arms crossed defensively. "How long?" he asked. Jessica looked away. "Colin, this isn't." "How long, Jessica?" His voice rose a notch, the anger beginning to leak through his controlled facade. 2 years, she admitted, her voice low. "Almost 2 years." Colin laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. 2 years. 2 years you were sleeping in my bed, eating at my table, using my money, and sleeping with him. "It wasn't like that," Jessica tried to defend. "It wasn't like that?" Colin took a step toward her. "Then tell me how it was, Jess. Explain how you spent 2 years lying to my face. Explain how you invented fake debts to drain me financially before running off." "The debts were real," Jessica protested, tears starting to fall. "I really owed that money." "But for what?" Colin countered. "For work equipment? Or for the hotels where you met him? For the gifts you bought him? For the apartment you were planning to rent together?" The silence that followed was deafening. Jessica didn't deny it. Ethan, in the background, shifted his weight from foot to foot, visibly uncomfortable. Colin turned to Ethan. "Did you know she was married?" Ethan cleared his throat. "She said you were separated. That your marriage had been over for a long time." Colin nodded slowly. "Separated. Interesting. Because yesterday morning she was sleeping beside me. The day before that, she was thanking me for saving her financial life. Does that sound separated to you?" Ethan didn't answer, the embarrassment clear on his face. Colin turned back to Jessica. "You used my money to fund his life. To build a new life with him. And you did it after looking me in the eyes, crying, saying you needed help. You manipulated me, emptied me, and ran. That has a name, Jessica. It's called fraud. I was going to pay you back." Jessica sobbed. "I was going to pay you back once I stabilized with new clients." "New clients?" Colin let out a dry laugh. "Do you really think I believe that? You never planned to come back. You planned to disappear. And it would have worked, if you hadn't been so careless with your emails." Jessica opened her mouth to respond, but no sound came out. Colin took another step, now standing close to her. I spent 9 years building a life with you. I trusted you. I loved you with everything I had. And you threw it all away. Why, Jessica? Why? Because I didn't love you anymore. Jessica shouted, the words bursting out in a flood of desperation. I haven't loved you in years. I felt trapped, suffocated. And then I met Ethan, and he made me feel alive again. The words cut deep, but Colin didn't look away. He nodded, processing, accepting the brutal truth. All right. You didn't love me. I can accept that. But you didn't need to use me. You didn't need to steal from me. I didn't steal. Jessica protested weakly. You took my money under false pretenses. You lied about its purpose. That's theft, Jessica. And you're going to pay for it. Colin stepped back toward the door. He looked at Ethan one more time. You think you won a prize? You ended up with someone capable of lying for years, using people like ATMs, abandoning without looking back. Good luck with that. You're going to need it. He left the studio, descended the stairs, and got in the car. His hands trembled on the wheel. He took a deep breath, trying to control the emotion threatening to spill over. Then he drove back to Portland, alone on the dark road, processing the destruction of what he'd thought was his life. On Monday morning, Colin sat in the office of Martha Holloway, a divorce attorney with 20 years of experience. She listened to his story carefully, taking notes, asking pointed questions. When Colin finished, she leaned back in her chair, fingers interlaced on the desk. Do you have proof? She asked. Colin pulled out his phone and showed her photos of the emails he'd taken, the messages, the search history he'd found on the shared computer, showing Jessica's searches for divorce and asset division. I have this. And I have the bank statement showing the transfer I made to her account 3 days before she disappeared. Martha nodded thoughtfully. Oregon is an equitable distribution state, not community property. That means assets are divided fairly, but not necessarily equally. And we can argue that the misuse of marital funds, especially when coupled with proven infidelity and financial fraud, must be considered in the division. I want everything back, Colin said, his voice firm. Or as much as the law allows. Martha smiled slightly. Let's make it happen. The divorce proceedings began the same week. Jessica was formally served and, according to Martha, tried to hire a lawyer but was struggling financially, ironically, because all the money Colin had given her had already been spent. She tried contacting Colin several times, sending messages begging to talk, saying they could resolve things amicably. Colin never replied. In court, Martha presented all the evidence, the emails, the messages, the bank statements, even Rachel's reluctant testimony confirming the affair. The judge, a middle-aged man with decades of family law experience, listened with a neutral expression. Jessica tried arguing the money had been used to pay real debts, but when Martha showed detailed records, hotel bookings under her and Ethan's names, expensive gift purchases shipped to Ethan's address, even the initial payment for an apartment in Eugene, her defense collapsed. The ruling was harsh on Jessica. She was ordered to repay Colin $28,000, the amount proven to have been fraudulently diverted. She also lost any claim to the house they'd shared, which remained entirely Colin's, and was required to cover half the legal costs. Since she had no immediate resources, the judge set up a payment plan, to be strictly monitored. If she failed, additional legal action could follow. Jessica's reputation in Portland's creative community also suffered. The story leaked, as it often does in small, interconnected creative circles. Clients who once hired her began to drift away, uncomfortable with the negative publicity. Her portfolio dwindled. She tried to rebuild, but the stain remained. Her relationship with Ethan didn't last. About 4 months after the confrontation, Ethan realized Jessica wasn't the independent, passionate partner he'd imagined. She was financially broken, emotionally unstable, and carried a heavy burden of regret and guilt. He ended the relationship with a text, then blocked her. Jessica was alone, living in a small apartment in Eugene, struggling to rebuild a destroyed career and a lost reputation. Colin, meanwhile, spent the first months after the divorce in a mix of relief and sadness. The house that had once been a home now felt too big, too empty. He sold some furniture that carried painful memories and slowly redecorated, turning the space into something that was only his. He started therapy, recognizing he needed to process the betrayal, the loss, the feeling of having been so completely deceived. He also reconnected with old friends he'd neglected during his marriage. They went out for drinks, watched Trailblazers games, took weekend hikes. Colin realized he'd had a support network all along, just waiting. And that made a difference. At work, Colin threw himself into new projects. He took the lead on a technically challenging public transit expansion that was deeply satisfying. He worked with a talented team, and the project was recognized by the city, even earning a mention in a local newspaper. Colin felt pride, not just in the work, but in how he'd rebuilt himself. A year after the divorce, Colin attended a civil engineering conference in Seattle. It was a 3-day event with lectures, workshops, and networking. On the second night, during the gala dinner, he was introduced to Sophie, an environmental engineer. She was intelligent, funny, passionate about urban sustainability. They talked for hours, discovering shared interests, laughing over inside jokes about structural failures and government bureaucracy. Colin didn't rush. He'd learned his lesson. He and Sophie exchanged contacts, began talking regularly, first about work, then about life, dreams, fears. It took months before he felt ready for a real date, to open his heart again. But when he did, it was with caution, with wisdom, with the awareness that trust is built slowly. Jessica tried reaching out to Colin a few times during that first year. Messages begging for forgiveness, saying she'd made a terrible mistake, asking if there was any chance of reconciliation. Colin never replied. He blocked her number, deleted her emails without reading them, moved on without looking back. He understood, over time and through therapy, that some people enter our lives as lessons, not blessings. Jessica had been a painful lesson about blind trust, about ignored signs, about the importance of valuing yourself enough not to accept crumbs of love disguised as commitment. She taught Colin that trying to save someone who's dragging you down only makes you drown with them. And that sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is let go, accept the pain, and rebuild from the ruins. Colin Mercer came out the other side transformed. More cautious, yes, but also stronger. He learned that starting over doesn't mean forgetting, but choosing not to let the past define the future. He learned that true love doesn't manipulate, doesn't hide, doesn't use. And he learned that, in the end, the person you most need to save is yourself. And that's exactly what he did. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.